Welcome to the Problematic Gaze with me, Dr. Lee Arnott.
And me, Dave Moore.
Each episode, we'll take a piece of pop culture from the last 60 years and examine it through the problematic lens. Is it problematic? If it is problematic, what does that say about society and culture then? And what does it say about society and culture now?
And before we take a deep dive into our chosen topic, we'll look at the news events of the day. We'll look at what was in the TV landscape, and we'll also look at the charts. So, how are you, Lee?
I'm very good, thanks. How are you?
Tired. We had a busy day yesterday, didn't we?
We had a very busy day yesterday because, dear listeners, we were out and about in the City of London filming various things for our social media accounts, which you should keep your eye on.
Yeah, we'll be posting quite a few little social media snippets to accompany our future episodes and our past episodes, actually. So, yeah, we set ourselves quite a heavy schedule yesterday, didn't we? And we walked and walked and walked all around London. And actually, it's quite apt for the episode we're going to watch because our two protagonists have to work for half a day and are absolutely exhausted at the end of it. And that was us, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, we had done 6 hours. It was exhausting.
6 whole hours, one whole half day of work. But it was fun, and it was good to spend time with you, Lee, because you are a font of all knowledge of all things London. In a previous life, you did used to do London Talk Eyes, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yeah. So I do know quite a lot, yeah. But yeah, it was fun, really good. And we got to see the Ab Fab House, speaking of today's episode, which was a thrill and which I used to work round the corner from for many years and never realised. So I walked past it many times and never even clocked that it was Edina Monsoon's house. There we go.
I felt a little bit like we were at Disneyland when we discovered that house, you know.
Yeah. I mean, we had to contain ourselves, didn't we? We had to get the girls out and the tenor ladies on, the tenor men on.
We really did. We were very giddy, very giddy. But yeah, that was fun. That was one of many places that we went to yesterday. So yes, so feeling it today, I feel my legs are a little bit achy, but it was fun. Anything else you've been doing this week?
Yes. Just being ill, mainly, which was really boring. After my tumble last week, I then got a stomach bug. So was immobilised and then, just grotesque. Let's crash on to something else, should we? How about our mailbag?
Yes, we've been getting mail.
We've got mail. I was trying to think of a little jingle, but all I could think of was like, mailbag, it's the mailbag. And that was it. So maybe that's our jingle for the mailbag.
Let's think on that score. So we'll be reading some of these emails out over the next few episodes, but we have got one, a really lovely email from someone called Liz, who lives in Loughborough. Hi, Liz.
Hello, Liz. Liz is a long-time listener from the beginning anyway. Oh, this is our 20th episode. Congratulations. Congratulations to us. She wanted to say how much she loves the podcast. It feels like having a chat with friends, ones that are fun, but also know stuff. That's us. And she really enjoys the gentle angles we come from and our gentle bickering over Madonna. I don't think there's any bickering over Madonna, is there?
I'm slowly bringing you around to my way of thinking anyway.
I mean, maybe Madonna's film career, but, you know, everything else is, I'm on board. I'm on board with Madge. Now, she knows that Pretty Woman was controversial, but she asked if we thought about doing an episode on Top Gun. She saw it about 6 times in the cinema when she was a teenager and she loved it, but she's sure there are angles and elements her young eyes didn't notice, and it's probably problematic. And that's love from Liz in Loughborough. I think that's a good idea. Do you know, I have never seen Top Gun.
I've seen Top Gun about many years ago, and obviously there are certain scenes that stick out to me more than others, mainly the ones that bear a lot of male flesh. Volleyball springs to mind, and then there was some sort of kind of like flying of aeroplanes in it too.
Right. I got the impression there's a fair few aeroplanes in it. Obviously, all I know of it is the theme tune, which was number 1 for weeks back in the day. And I just wasn't that bothered. But maybe we should put that on the list for a future episode.
Well, we should, because I mean, people do say it's quite a homoerotic film. So it might be right up our straw, so you never know. I mean, there might be elements that we might be able to glean out of it.
Indeed. So let's get that on the list. Thank you very much, Liz. Please send us in your letters. Please send
It's not a swap shop.
Yeah. On a stamped addressed envelope or a postcard if you can find one. But we'd love to hear from you. If it's nice, obviously. If it's horrible, go outside and do something else. Why are you wasting your time?
Don't bother.
Listen to
Don't bother. Email us at theproblematicgaze@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you. And thank you, Liz. Hope you enjoy this episode.
Thank you, Liz. You'll get your T-shirt in the post.
Speaking of which, what are we talking about this episode, Dr. Lee?
Well, to this episode today, we are talking about, it's something that has undoubtedly shaped the lives of many gay men. Actually, many women, I think, of a certain age. Absolutely fabulous. Ab Fab, classic sitcom from the 90s, the noughties, the 2010s when the movie came out. Do you want to say a little bit about Fab?
Yeah, Ab Fab, history thereof. Okay, so, there may be some listeners who have never, ever seen Ab Fab. Absolutely fabulous. So I'll just kind of give a brief overview. So it was a sitcom, first broadcast in 1992, a multi-camera setup, British sitcom, written by Jennifer Saunders and starred Jennifer Saunders herself as Edina Monsoon and Joanna Lumley as Patricia Patsy Stone. They're two high-powered career women in the London fashion scene. Eddy runs her own PR firm and Patsy holds a position at a top British fashion magazine. It was notable for the two women using their considerable financial resources to indulge in cigarettes, alcohol and recreational drugs, and to chase the latest fads in an attempt to maintain their youth and recapture their glory days. All overlooked by Edina's daughter, Saffron, who cast a disapproving glare over Edina and Patsy's antics. And that was the main crux of the sitcom, was the mother and daughter relationship. I think that's it in a nutshell, don't you?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. What's your relationship with Ab Fab?
Immeasurable relationship I've got with Ab Fab. I think it kind of shaped my youth. Going into my old age, I gauge my actions on those of Edina and Patsy to a certain extent. At least I used to. I think over the years I've probably turned more into a Saffron kind of character. But I just loved it. I just think it just gave Edina and Patsy, gave everybody who watched it license to be a little bit naughty, be a little bit debauched. I thought it was extremely well written, really well crafted, really well acted, directed, and I watch it repeatedly to this day. How about you?
I think I need to talk a bit about my relationship with Joanna Lumley at this point, because from about the age of 11, I was quietly obsessed with Joanna Lumley. The New Avengers was repeated in my ITV region back in the 80s, and I watched it, adored her, and remember Sapphire and Steel, obviously, from when I was a kid. My dad used to fancy her, so we could bond a bit over Joanna Lumley. Obviously, I didn't fancy her. Maybe I had a little crush on her. Maybe, I don't know. So when I remember in 91 that she was filming this new thing, because she'd done some stuff with Ruby Wax and had shown her comedy stripes, because until that point, Joanna Lumley was almost like the English Rose, wasn't she? She always got cast as a certain type. She was never really allowed to flex her acting chops or her comedy chops until she did these sketches with Ruby Wax, which then led directly onto Ab Fab. So I remember reading an interview with her before Ab Fab came out, and she was saying, I love Patsy. She drinks like a fish, smokes like a soldier, and dresses like a dream. What's not to love about her? And I thought, this character sounds amazing. And when it started, obviously, I was just blown away. And when she won the BAFTA for Best Comedy, I sobbed. My little Joe Lumley fan boy sobbed. And that was it, and I remember when it started in 92, everybody was sweetie, darling, fabulous. And and like you, they've just given great license. I mean, your husband and I have a relationship where he calls me Pats and I'm his Pats to his Eddy, So they still linger around like bad farts, don't they, Pats and Eddy? And it was just such a breath of fresh air to see, which I'm sure we'll talk about, to see women being able to behave in this way, which I think when we discussed in our Men Behaving Badly episode, this kind of behavior had only ever been the preserve of men at that point. So to see women suddenly doing, as you say, the sex, drugs and rock and roll, I loved it. I thought it was really empowering. I thought it was really empowering for gay people, for women. Yeah, it was great. They're indelibly, cut me open and you'll see a stick of Patsy and Edina running right through me.
So before we go any further, shall we put our episode that we're going to watch into context? So we're going to watch an episode called Morocco from the second series of AbFab, which was transmitted on the 10th of February 1994. So we've already looked at 1994 during our Men Behaving Badly episode. So what we thought we'd do...
Let's reopen the Book of Death and see who died in 1994. Because there's quite a few big hitters, aren't there?
There are.
I mean, for my morbid curiosity, this is the year that both John Wayne Gacy and Jeffrey Dahmer died. Both two hideous serial killers. John Wayne Gacy was executed and Jeffrey Dahmer was killed in prison by another prisoner. And there's two really sad deaths from AIDS this year. 1994, AIDS is still a killer, and Derek Jarman dies, and John Curry, the ice skater, both die of AIDS-related illnesses. I mean, this is 30 years ago now. So AIDS was still very much a death sentence at that point. It was, if you got it, not necessarily a death sentence, but chances are you would die from it if you got it.
Yeah.
There are also some fairly big hitters of British telly up there as well. We lost Terry Scott from Terry and June that year. Speaking of
June Whitfield.
June Whitfield, who's in AbFab. We lost Mark McManus, who was Taggart. There's been about that.
Go on, say it. You've just said
I've just said it. God, do you listen to me at all, darling?
There's been a matter.
We lost Roy Castle from Record Breakers. He died of lung cancer, I remember. Never smoked in his life, but he apparently contracted it from all the smoky jazz clubs he used to play trumpet in back in the day, they think.
I can't see. I've only gone up to March, and then I can't. Oh, I see. This is a massive long list.
One of us prepared for this. One of us didn't. That's all I'm saying.
It's an American list. I'm sorry. I'm annoyed about this because it's an American list, and I'm just scrolling through loads and loads that I don't know.
It's an international list, darling. It's an international list. Well, I'll say to you, who loves your baby? Would that be a clue?
Tell us Sylvalis. Okay, I knew that one.
I'm
good at quizzes.
Thank you. There we go. If I said to you the president of Watergate...
I'm going to cut this pause out while I'm thinking. Nixon.
Yes, he died that year. If I said her husband was a president that was assassinated, would you know who that was?
Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy Onassis.
Thank you. And Peter Cushing, a hero of mine, also died this year. John Candy died, 40-something or other, massive heart attack.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
I tell you. And they're the kind of notable ones I picked off the Book of Death.
Okay, yeah, I've got a few. I've got Francois Rosé, a French-Canadian actor, born 1899. And then I've got Irene Eisinger, German-British singer. Walter Arnold, German theologist.
Are you just taking the piss now?
Dies at 64.
Stop it. Step away from the list. Step away from the list.
Marcel Icach.
You're not impressing anybody.
Director.
Step away from the list.
All I'm saying is, the next time you send a death list through, could you kind of condense it so it doesn't include literally everybody who died in 1994?
All I'm saying is maybe if you prepared for the episode, you wouldn't be in such a kerfuffle, would you?
Fair enough. Let's gloss over that one and look at the official singles charts, which is something else you've sent through, which I can decode very, very easily. So this is the official singles charts from week commencing the 6th of February 1994.
That was 2 days before my 21st birthday.
I remember the early 90s, kind of 92 to 95, being quite sparse on the music charts compared to a few years that had gone prior. It just felt like a very dry, fallow period of music in general.
Just her first 10 numbers. Slow Motion, who's that? Okay, Charlatans, never heard that song. Cud, don't know who that is. Manic Street Preachers, don't know that song at all. Urban Species, never heard of them. Bitty McLean, that's right, 30 to 40. Let's have a look a bit higher up. See, we've got Garth Bloody Brooks. Well, Texas are floating around. We're so in love with you.
Eternal, Save Our Love. It's All Right. He's 17.
Is that everybody? Oh, body, it's already want to be your body. Is that one?
I don't know.
Good. Anyway, let's crash on. Rosala's got a follow-up to Everybody's Free. Okay, Elastica, I know, but I don't know that song. Oh, God. Linger, the Cranberries, that's a good one.
Yes,
Yeah.
Linger. That's the first. That's the first one that I kind of know and enjoyed. And then Cornflake Girl, Tori Amos, number 15.
Hadaway at number 12 with I Miss You. I don't know that song, but didn't he sing What is Love? Baby, don't hurt
Yeah,
me. Red Hot Chili Peppers
yeah.
with Give It Away at number 11.
And then we get to the top 10, and it's just a little bit Deep Foresty, Reel to Reel, Wendy Moten, K7. Stop me when you've heard of one of these. Oh,
I've heard of number 9, actually. Like to Move It,
oh
but
yeah.
Reel to Reel. I like to move it, move it. You know, oh my
Is this
God.
an audition tape for you?
Yeah. Simon Cowell's actually watching from the other side of the room, so I'm just putting out all the stops here. And then he said Simon Callow, which would be a completely different experience. Number 6, God, this sounds a dirge. All for Love by Bryan Adams, Rod Stewart, and Sting, the holy trinity of dad rock.
That was from a movie, but I can't remember which one. Was it something like Three Musketeers or something? Oh, well, it will be, won't it? All for Love. It's like
All for Love.
One.
Yeah, it must be. God, this is rubbish, isn't it? The Power of Love by Celine Dion.
Yeah.
Enigma. Oh, those dreadful Enigma songs. Number 2. What's number 1? Okay, number 1. Things Can Only Get Better by Dee Ream, which will be used by the Labour Party.
Yes, I mean, yes, Things Can Only Get Better, D Ream, number 1. It's just a load of dirge. You know what I mean? It kind of feels like a chart that's waiting for the next big thing to come along.
Do you know what? I
mean?
I remember you.
And I can't remember what the next big thing was.
The next big thing, I think, will be the Spice Girls in '96. Because I remember by the time the Spice Girls arrived, I was so kind of out of the charts because, as you say, it just seemed really dull. It was really boring. There was nothing happening. I'm a gay of a certain age, so the Spice Girls were just like, oh my God, I love them. I know it's pathetic, isn't it? I wasn't a teenage girl, but hey ho, I was next audience level.
Well, I wouldn't say that the Spice Girls are a guilty pleasure. I think they're not a guilty pleasure at all. You shouldn't hide your love for the Spice Girls. I think it should be celebrated. I'll say it.
Yeah, you've said it. We'll celebrate it. If you, by the way, listener, if you hear me pausing, it's because David has asked if we can record today's episode trying not to swear. So I like your use of the word dirge instead of what a load of sugar.
Beep.
So we'll see how this goes.
It's not that I'm becoming a Puritan or anything,
all right,
dear gazers. It's just I want to try an experiment to see if putting out a non-explicit episode garners more listeners. But who can say? We might be back to effing and jeffing by this time next week. Who knows?
Effing and jeffing. Yeah, that was a bit of a rubbish chart. Rubbish. Crash on.
It was. It's just a good job that there was something absolutely fabulous on TV that we can watch instead of listening to the charts.
I see what you did there. That was a nice segue. That was beautifully done.
Crash, bang, crowbar.
Insert here.
Sale starts Tuesday.
So, for this week's subject of conversation, absolutely fabulous, episode 3 of season 2, Morocco. Do you want to tell us what happens in this episode, Dave?
So basically, Edina and Patsy have organised a photo shoot in Morocco, and Edina's daughter Saffron piggybacks on the journey, much to Patsy's chagrin. And they're going to promote some pop specs, which are a product that Edina is PRing at the moment. So they end up in Morocco. It's a rare occasion when Absolutely Fabulous goes on location. And what ensues is a series of hilarious events. They arrive at a riad owned by their old friend Humphrey. They get stoned, they sunbathe, they go shopping in the souk, and eventually go on the photo shoot, and other hilarious things ensue. And they accidentally, on purpose, Patsy sells Saffron off and she goes missing, and they later find her. So I feel as though, because we are the problematic gays, I feel as though we need to kind of look at this rather than subjectively of our love for Absolutely Fabulous, look at it objectively through the problematic lens. Because I would say out of all the episodes of Absolutely Fabulous that, you know, are wonderful and we love them, we chose this episode because we do feel as though there are some problematic elements in it. But it's not just us that think that. Jennifer Saunders has said in recent years that Absolutely Fabulous might not be made now. By her own admittance, were some problematic elements involved in it. And we felt like this one highlighted them more than any other episode.
Yeah, it's true. And yeah, for as much as we love it, you're right, it's very much a product. I mean, this episode is 30 years old. And again, it spoke to me of the culture that gave us the What Not to Wear shows. You know, there's quite a bit of body shaming in Ab Fab. There's quite a lot of punching down that I hadn't really clocked before, which is a little disappointing when you watch it with today's eyes. But obviously in 1994 eyes, it just passed by without comment. Yeah, and there were some wince-inducing moments in this, despite the fact that it's very funny. But there are some things that, wow, there's no way you could say or do that again today. Some comments about the country of Morocco, comments about a burqa. There's allusions to the white slave trade. It on the surface, it's frothy, fun, and camp, but there are a little few bits which are like, ooh, ow, ooh, that's not very good. So yeah, let's try and be as objective as possible. But it's fabulous. No, but let's try and be as objective as possible. The thing is, it's so difficult because there's so much just from this one episode that is so kind of wrapped up in the iconography of the series itself. Just mentions of Bolly, you know, that they used to drink Bolly stollies, you know, vodka and champagne mixed together, which was a cocktail that nobody ever wanted. Or if you tried it, it was disgusting. I don't think it existed before Ab Fab.
So I feel as though Patsy and Edina are actually grotesque characters. And again, you know, to paraphrase Jennifer Saunders, we're not really supposed to like these people. They are quite despicable people in their attitudes and the way they behave. So yes, for all we love Edina and Patsy, they are intended to kind of throw a mirror on the audience in that kind of satirical way where we're laughing at them, but actually they kind of reflect the worst in humanity, in selfishness, their dedication to advertising and capitalism. You know, they're not supposed to be good moral characters. They're very immoral or amoral. Yeah. So I think that's worth bearing in mind as well, that by Jennifer Saunders' own admission, we're not really supposed to like them. They are quite grotesque in a way.
Yeah, I think grotesque is a really good word, actually, because the best kind of comedy characters who aren't grotesque tend to have an element of pathos about them. You know, that sadness and laughter are so very much sides of the same coin. And if you think of characters like Del Boy from Only Fools and Horses, or Steptoe and Son, there's an underlying tragedy which kind of heightens the comedy, I guess. Whereas for Pat and Eddy, it's the grotesquerie that's funny. And I guess, as you say, that grotesquerie is used satirically. So, and it's just not necessarily a shame, but I do find it quite ironic that all the people who love Ab Fab took on all these qualities without kind of probably reflecting on actually what Jennifer Saunders was saying, that you're not supposed to like them. But in a kind of way, they're anti-heroes because you can't help but like them because they're so ridiculous and they're so kind of extreme in their reactions and their thoughts and their attitudes, aren't they? But I mean, you've got to love them, haven't you? But they're grotesque. They're grotesque. You're right. Yeah, they're absolutely grotesque.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of highlighted in this episode more than perhaps others. That kind of the racist undertones to some of the dialogue that they talk about in this episode. It's there to send up how hideous they are. It's not for you to kind of laugh along and agree with. You know, when they talk about what did the British give the North Africans, the non-squat toilet and toilet tissue, and what did they wipe their bums on before we gave them that? Oh, bits of hoof and stuff. It's they're saying these things to highlight their hideousness and their grotesqueness, not necessarily for the audience to agree with what they're saying.
I think that a 1994 audience wouldn't have either not picked up on that or probably agreed with it. There's still a real colonial overhang. Even today, there's still well, we gave them railways, didn't we? Is it like obliterating all the horror of colonialism and imperialism? And there's still never been an honest conversation in this country about it, because the people on the right immediately shut it down. It's like, why the horrors of what we've done is how a nation matures and comes to terms with itself. So I think for 1994 viewers, they would either have agreed and gone, yeah, that's right, and we gave them railways, or seen the humor in it. Because, and there's another comment that she passes, if let's look at this kind of racist tropes in it, that this imperial tropes almost in it, and she says that a nation that has a pillowcase with a slit in it for a national costume, talking about a burqa. I mean, good God, there's absolutely no way you could say that today, unless you're Boris Johnson, of course, talking about women who look like post boxes or whatever.
I felt as though that lens of colonialism was placed on this, and there was a really interesting moment of dialogue where Saffy says to Humphrey, who owns the riad that they go and stay in, that she's studying the indigenous tribes of the local area, and he comes back with, oh, well, they're all gone now, the Guinesons, the Teesons, Princess Margaret hardly visits. So he assumes when she says the local tribes of the area that she's talking about the colonial families that used to inhabit there. And it was quite telling that he kind of said, to paraphrase, that they're not here anymore because we've taken what we could from them. There's an entitlement of colonial families and the colonials who exploited the natural resources of that area. But now, because you can get all these things cheaper elsewhere, there's no point in them being there anymore.
Yeah. And Humphrey himself is like a callback to that kind of the civil servants who used to run the empire back in the day. He's upper class, he's of a certain age, he's a white man dressed in his kind of linen suit. You can tell he's a predator as well. Yeah, and it's the colonialism aspect of this I thought was super interesting, just seeing how in your face it was without being necessarily in your face. It was just kind of an accepted, understated, but really kind of obvious. Yeah.
Another element of that I felt was when they go shopping in the souk. Edina, Patsy and Saffy go shopping in the souks of Marrakech. And Edina is initially dressed with a lot of skin showing, which is kind of frowned upon for women to dress like that way in a Muslim country. And kind of lends itself again to that sense of entitlement that, we can come to this country and we can do what we want, we can behave how we want, and they just have to accept it, rather than the other way around of, let's respect the traditions of and the customs of the place that we're visiting. There's that sense of entitlement there as well from her.
But there's also a sense of entitlement on the production company, because I suspect that they just plonked Jennifer Saunders in the middle of this thronged souk in this so much flesh on display. And the reactions of the people around her are spontaneous and genuine, even though there are TV cameras there. I thought also that's also a little bit arrogant. If we could step outside the characters and just the actual production itself. And is that another colonial overhang? You don't have to worry about the locals. You don't have to worry about the local culture. It's this entitled, privileged, this is the way we do it. So suck it up, buttercup.
Okay, let's move on to Saffy. Saffy in this episode is sexually assaulted by Humphrey in the villa. There's quite graphic scenes of him rubbing her bum and then rubbing under her boobs. There's allusions to, Patsy says before they go, that you don't go to Morocco to study the indigenous population. You go for easygoing sex with underage youths.
Yeah, and with gorgeous underage youths.
Yes, and then we have Saffy being sold by Patsy in a comical way. Well, we don't know who exactly she's being sold to, but there's that illusion. There's that old kind of common trope. It's very tired that, you can sell a woman for however many camels, depending on how beautiful she is. There's that old kind of going on, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Patsy even makes a joke of it, so they had to haggle them up, trying to. And Edina says, when she wanted to study the indigenous population, I didn't think she meant she wanted to be part of the white slave trade. And it's a bit like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yes. So quite near the knuckle, isn't it?
Oh dear. Yeah, really is. But then, in fairness to the show, I couldn't really spot any other problematic elements because the comedy, it's genuinely funny. And again, yes, let's look at that colonialism overhang, but let's also put it side to side with the genuine physical comedy, which is funny, the lines which are super sharp, the performances which are always spectacular.
So with all that bear in mind, we've kind of discussed the problematic elements of the show objectively, but subjectively, let's go on to that. Let's talk about the fun elements of this particular episode. First of all, let's talk about the pop specs.
Yeah, I mean, these pop specs, if you haven't seen the episode, which is on ITVX, not iPlayer anymore, they're these glasses which are empty frames and you can insert different lenses to show your mood or to show they are plastic tat, aren't they? And as you mentioned earlier, it's kind of like Edina is a slave of capitalism. It was interesting seeing the 1994 green message in there. And Saffy was saying to her, what about the planet? Just polluting more crap on the planet. There's just more plastic tat. And she says, well, look, and she shows her the bag. Proudly they come in and it's got a tree on it. Saffy says, what does that mean? He says, well, they're kind to trees. And she said, well, how? She said, well, they're not made of wood, are they? Edina loves tat and rubbish and just more, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And I thought it was really interesting that Saffy kind of highlights the futility of what Edina does for a living.
Yeah, I mean, the dynamic between them is super interesting because Saffy is always in the parental role while Edina is the teenage girl. And that goes right back to the original French and Saunders sketch on which Ab Fab is based, in which Dawn French played the Saffy role. But I love the fact that Patsy obviously hates Saffy, and her hatred of Saffy is long established, because Saffy was the baby who took her best friend off her. And as we later discover, Patsy has always been abusing Saffy, kind of. On the sign here, we get Edina turns away and you just hear Saffy scream, ow, It turns out that Patsy burnt her with a cigarette and she just goes, accident, and it's so awful. She's so awful to her.
It really is. It really is. And not only so does Patsy burn her with cigarettes multiple times throughout the series, tries to sell her in Morocco to the white slave trade. We also find out in a later episode that Patsy tied Saffron to the central reservation for a good few hours.
For motorway. I know. And Saffy hates Patsy just as much, doesn't she?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think what's really nice about Ab Fab is that, on the surface, it's kind of a parody of these two grotesque women who just go out drinking, smoking, having sex and taking lots of drugs. But fundamentally, it's a story about a relationship between a mother and a daughter. Really strained relationship, which is, again, like you say, that kind of occasionally brings the pathos to absolutely fabulous, rather than it just being whole surface, two women behaving badly, so to speak.
What I love as well is each episode of Ab Fab is like a snapshot of technology at the time, because Edina is always trying to be cutting edge and ahead of the crew. So we get the latest technology is Bubble, who is Edina's PA, who's as much used as a sponge leg, played by the fabulous Jane Horrocks. And she's talking about breaking the mouse on the computer. And it sounds like they've only got one computer in the office of Edina's company, which is probably true, actually, in 1994. I thought that was a really nice little, wow, look at how low tech it is and how high tech they think, well, they are, I guess, for 1994 standards.
Absolutely. And you get a sense that with Edina and Patsy, they're always trying Edina especially, trying the latest element of technology, but also kind of hating every moment of it, hating the technology, hating the aspects of her job, and always kind of hankering after yesteryear, kind of reliving their youth. I mean, they'd be much more at home, sat around smoking a joint with the Rolling Stones or something. It's always that they're trying to kind of recreate their past. and they're really not happy in the worlds that they inhabit of PR and fashion, etc. They're not those kind of people, really. They're just trying to struggle to survive in it. Also, where I feel Ab Fab really thrives, apart from the really tight script, the brilliant writing and the brilliant acting, is the elements of farce in it. It's such, it's such heightened reality, and in this episode, we kind of got, the luggage carousel moment, which is pretty infamous now. It's played on all the clip shows where they're struggling to kind of stand on the luggage carousel. And then they go into the heat of Marrakech and they both faint either side of Saffy. That's another kind of moment. So, yeah, I really enjoy their moments of farce, which, is really difficult to pull off.
Yeah, I mean, the physical comedy in it is fantastic. It's so much fun. That carousel scene is just brilliant, What was another thing I was thinking about Ab Fab in general, and again, it's this kind of idea of punching down, but it's very sizist. And the character of Edina is always talking about how fat she is. And it's Jennifer Saunders, she's not fat, but if we think back to Love Actually, if we think back to What Not to Wear, we've discussed this body shaming, and the calling her fat was just a thing. And it really made me laugh thinking back to the first series, when it's on the last episode, it's her 40th birthday, and she is, quotation marks, old because she's turned 40. And it's like, wow, and again, we've discussed how people have aged differently over the decades. And I guess in 1994, 40 still seemed that was the beginning of your old life, in a way that it is not today at all,
Yeah, I think with the whole element of the kind of like the fat shaming and Edina's constant battle with her weight, it's as if Edina is a victim of the world that she inhabits, because they do live in the fashion glossy magazine world, which at that point always encouraged people to be thin, presented the thin way of life as the pinnacle. That's what you need to achieve to be thin. Yeah. So it's kind of like a vicious cycle for Edina. That's the world she inhabits, but that's equally, she can't obtain the supposed ideal that those magazines project.
Yeah, that's the irony of her character, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, we do get some more in this episode, some more really, really funny bits, especially when they're all sat around smoking weed. They've obviously fed Saffy some space cakes or something, and she starts to feel ill, asks her mum for help, and her mum is just so stoned she just collapses on the floor. And then in the denouement, they get stoned and wake up, decide to do a little bit of shopping, etc. But then Saffy has to tell Patsy and Edina that they've actually been unconscious for 3 days and it's time to catch the plane home. This kind of brought back memories for me watching this episode, because me and my other half actually went to Marrakech a few years ago, and some of the encounters that they encountered happened to us too, about, going missing in the souk. I said to my other half, just look forward. People try and sell you things, but the best thing to do is just go a quick no thank you and walk on. Don't make eye contact or anything. So he nodded and said he agreed. Literally within about the first 60 seconds of being in the souk, I was charging ahead, looked round, and he'd been led into one of the side shops to be sold something. I was like, what did I tell you? And then, we get these scenes of a bird being put on Edina's hand and them looking in pots of fish being cooked. So it just kind of really evoked all the sights and the sounds of Marrakech for me. And I remember one distinct incident when I was walking through the main square, as do Patsy and Edina, and then Saffy accidentally gets sold in this main square. And I was walking, I took a step, and this man just pulled me back. And I was like, oh my God, what's he doing? What's he doing? And he said, serpent, which is snake. And I looked down and my foot was hovering over this sleeping snake, because obviously they've got the snake charmers, etc. And my heart fell out of my bottom at that moment, because I thought, what if I'd have stepped on that snake? So it is quite a perilous place to go, but also the riad that they stayed in, there was nice, locations, sweeping shots over the rooftops of Marrakech, panning onto their swimming pool. And it just evoked a lot of memories of Marrakech. It's a fantastic place to go. I don't know if you've ever been.
No, I haven't. When we were in Seville, my mum did an excursion there on her own for like 3 days and had an absolute ball by all accounts. So good on you, Mum. You got very friendly with a few of the locals. So maybe one day.
Maybe, I think you'd love it there, actually, Lee. I think you'd be right in your element.
Yeah, I think I would as well. Jeepers, jeepers. Anyway.
Moving on.
Can you pass my tenor man over again? Thank you, darling. So that was our fab. Some bits of it problematic, but I think on the whole, what a lovely celebration of womanhood, and what a great chance for these two actors to just let themselves go, you know. I remember reading an interview with, is it John Plowman, the producer of it? And he was saying, you know, when they were talking about casting Joanna Lumley, and he was saying to her, you know, your fan base so far has been retired army generals and middle-class women, but now it's going to be basically drag queens and gay men. And she was like, I'm up for that, you know. And Patsy Stone, how many drag queens have got Patsy Stone in their repertoire? You know, Patsy looks like a drag queen. If we're going to be brutally honest about it. You know, she's and in later episodes, there is a drag queen dressed as her that June Whitfield's character mistakes her for. So yeah, slightly problematic, but I think we've looked at worse, and I still think it's funny, and I think people should go and watch it because it's very much a snapshot of Britain at a certain time.
Well, cheers. Thanks a lot to that, darling.
Cheers. Thanks a lot, sweetie. Cheers. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Cheers, darling. Cheers, darling. Cheers, darling.
Well, that was Ab Fab. It was lovely to pay homage to our two wonderful heroines, Patsy and Edina, and their wider circle. Okay, Lee, so what are we going to be talking about next week?
Oh,
Lee, are you all right?
Don't stray from the path. All right,
Have you been possessed?
I'll tell you. No, I haven't been possessed, but because it's coming up to Halloween and spooky season, we are going to get all lycanthropic next week as we relive an American werewolf in London from 1981, I believe. I'm very much looking forward to it. I love this film.
I love this film too.
And keep an eye on our socials because we may have done some little filming in locations associated with this film yesterday on our day out, on our school trip.
Yes, we trod ourselves around London, didn't we? And so we had a little peruse around Piccadilly Circus, amongst many other places. If anyone's watched the film, they'll know what we're talking about. Yeah, really looking forward to that, to all things spooky. And whenever you say lycanthropic, I always think of She-Wolf by Shakira.
Bless you. You are gay.
That has been said before, yes.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, tell your friends, follow our socials. Please engage with our social content, especially after we did our school trip yesterday, for your benefit at Problematic Gays.
And don't forget to send us an email if you want to comment on anything you've heard before, or you want to suggest topics for future episodes. We'd love to hear from you, theproblematicgays@gmail.com. But until next week, Lee.
Until next week, dear gazers, that's us done.
Cheers, darling. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, sweetie. Cheers. Bye. Yeah, cheers. Thanks a lot. Yeah.